tonight. McKnight tonight.
Wrong again.
McKnight tonight. McKnight tonight.
I've seen that since university.
Funny, insightful interviews from a watch the feature so McKnight tonight. McKnight tonight. McKnight tonight. Here comes McKnight tonight.
Welcome to McKnight Tonight. Now, here's Rob McKnight.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to a brand new week of McKnight Tonight. I am Rob McKnight, and this is Monday, the 15th of September. Now, a big show coming up, but before we dive in, there's a new feature on YouTube called Hype. And what it allows you to do is hype videos. You click this button, it's like sharing it, but it's adding it to the hype reels or something. Anyway, you can do 3 a week, apparently. So if you like the videos we make here at McKnight Tonight and you want to help us grow, and you see that hype button, go and hit hype, because that will help us get bigger and brighter and reach more people. Hype is what you need. All right, to do that, just go to youtube.com/@McKnightTonight. That's youtube.com/@McKnightTonight. All right, I mentioned it was a big show. Let me tell you about it. Coming up, 3 people charged in relation to helping a man take his life. Why won't we let people die when they want to? Plus, the coalition sinks to its lowest ever news poll result while One Nation rides high. Jon Cryer blasts Charlie Sheen over a massive pay gap on 2.5 Men. I'll tell you why Charlie was worth every cent. The Tram Championships took place over the weekend, and boy, are they a sight to behold. And later, Graeme Hood returns after the Australia Unites rally. Did it deliver? We'll find out. A lot of you might be questioning why I'm bringing Graeme back on. We talked about the Australia Unites rally. I want to get his take on whether it worked and whether he achieved what he wanted to achieve. And also his connection with Charlie Kirk is going to be interesting to find out a bit about, actually, and hear his take. All right, let's get into our hot topics. 3 people have been charged over the alleged assisted suicide of a Gold Coast man. He is part of the story from tonight's edition of 9 News.
Boxes of evidence taken away from a Gold Coast backyard storage cabinet. Bottles of what police say is a veterinary animal euthanasia drug allegedly illegally used in a quadriplegic man's suicide in April.
Police will allege a 53-year-old Main Beach man supplied the drug to the victim for the purpose of ending his life.
That 53-year-old Brett Taylor, seen here, marched from his unit to a waiting police car, accused of aiding suicide and trafficking dangerous drugs.
We will allege he hasn't acted compassionately at all. This is a business transaction for him.
His 80-year-old father, Ian Taylor, also taken into custody, charged with trafficking and possessing dangerous drugs, along with 81-year-old Elaine Archrow, an advocate of voluntary assisted dying, accused of aiding suicide. The trio charged as a result of an investigation into the death of the 43-year-old in his Hope Island home. Voluntary assisted dying is legal in Queensland, but strict eligibility criteria include having a condition that will cause death and acting without coercion.
It's interesting, isn't it, that last graphic? You have to have a condition that will cause death. So if you're a quadriplegic with no quality of life, too bad. You have to stay alive. We give more compassion to animals than we do humans a lot of the time. And I know that police officers seem to be taking an issue with the fact this guy was doing it as a business. I don't care. Let him make as much money, because there is a service needed by a lot of people to do this. And as far as I'm concerned, it should be legal. People should have the right to make up their own minds about their quality of life. If you are in a situation where you don't have a quality of life, i.e. you're a quadriplegic, then maybe you don't want to be here, and maybe you have that right. You know, we keep hearing about the NDIS, and a lot of people have disagreed with me about the idea of sex workers. Okay, you're a terribly disabled person, and you've got society saying, well, you can't even use the NDIS to get sex workers because how dare you have pleasure? And not only that, we're going to make sure you stay alive and just have this horrible existence. I don't get it. I know there are people, God-fearing people, who will say every life is sacred and we need to protect life. But at what cost? Like, at what point do we say these people don't have a quality of life and they should have the right to determine that? Instead, we're going to charge these people who have been helping, providing a service, all with permission of the person involved. It's not murder. They're helping assisted dying. I don't understand. We've grown up in part in this country where it is legal under certain conditions, but those conditions are very hard. I mean, you basically have to be dying. It doesn't matter if basically you've got no quality of life because your body is so mangled, but if you're going to last a few more years, then no, you can't die. You basically have to have cancer or something. We need to grow up. We need to understand that, yes, life is worth living. And obviously, if you're a fit and healthy person, sure. But if you really have no quality of life, then maybe we need to let the individual decide. I find this story upsetting. These people will end up going to jail and it will be horrible. But our society will do that, and we're going to put all these resources into Queensland is trying to deal with the youth crime problem. Let's deal with people who are inflicting pain and suffering onto others, not people who are helping to relieve pain. How about we do that?
Here comes McKnight tonight.
And look, let me be clear on something. I'm not saying quadriplegics don't have a good quality of life. I'm specifically saying, and I'm assuming the fact that this person wanted help with assisted dying, that this person didn't have a quality of life. And that's the point I'm making here. So I think there are many quadriplegics who have a great quality of life and make the most of their situation and can make the most of their situation. I can only guess that this person wasn't in that situation. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section of this video. Just go to youtube.com/@McKnight. I will get to your feedback shortly. Well, Australian politics is in turbulence tonight. The coalition has crashed to its worst ever primary vote. According to the latest news poll, their support has slumped to just 27%, an historic low since polling began in 1985. Labor now holds a commanding two-party preferred lead of 58 to 42. And it's not just numbers. Opposition leader Susan Lee's approval rating has taken a hammering, dipping far into the negatives. The coalition really, it's on a train that is heading for a leadership change. And the events of last week with Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price really only reinforce that. Now, whether Angus Taylor becomes the leader, as I predicted, or whether Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price herself becomes the leader will be the interesting thing. Susan Lee was backed into a corner, I get it, where Price was not giving her wouldn't publicly state that she was a good leader, that she had her support. So Lee had no choice, really no choice, to dump Price from the shadow ministry. But it's a political maneuver that is ultimately going to cost her. And I just don't think Susan Lee's cutting through. At the moment, she just looks like she's trying to take a negative view to everything Labor's putting up. There are a lot of problems with Labor and a lot of things you can poke at, but she just doesn't seem, I don't know whether she's not poking the right things or it's the way she's delivering it, but she certainly isn't cutting through in my mind. And it is interesting. And this is where it goes, because there is a flow-on effect of this. So while the coalition sinks, One Nation is riding the wave. The same news poll puts One Nation's primary support at around 10%, its strongest showing in years. And you can see there the Greens are at 13%. Now, the Greens are in a whole lot of trouble, but One Nation is on the rise because there is discontent with Australia's major parties, and that's pushing voters towards the fringes. And you'll see this. I will guarantee in the next election that there will be more votes towards independence. The Teals had their chance, didn't quite deliver what people wanted, And the Greens, I think Adam Bandt did a lot of damage to the Greens. You know, back in the day, they were a party that you almost respected because they had their ideals, but they did their thing and they seemed to be going for good government. Adam Bandt just wanted to be the guy who could say, I forced Labor to do this, I forced the coalition to do that. And often it was where these parties were heading anyway. And I think he was the main reason the Greens had the big backlash against them at the last election and why Labor did so well. The coalition wasn't offering a good alternative. And unless the coalition gets their act together, we're going to see Labor either get stronger or One Nation and other parties get stronger. I don't think people have faith in the Greens. And you see them, you know, I saw one on afternoon briefing, and I can't remember her name, I apologise. But Patricia Karvelis was asking a question about clean energy and said, well, gas is a good clean energy. Well, gas is a good alternative to coal because when you're not using gas, you can turn it off and it's not emitting anything. And this Greens representative wouldn't have a bar of it. No, it's just as bad as coal. But she wasn't making it clear whether it was as bad as coal on the hot, like when it's on or even when it's off. And would not listen to the question from Patricia Karvelis because just had her talking point. And it's getting to the point where I watch politics and I'll listen to what's going on, but I'm now getting to I just had that thought of that meme from last week. Blah, 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 blah. I'm getting that from the Greens every time I hear. Actually, you know what? We've got to get the blur, blur, blur on standby every time I need to say it. just another trinket in our arsenal. But honestly, I'm not caring about the Greens. One Nation's interesting. I think Pauline Hanson is being more disciplined than ever before. And she seems to be making a real impact. So the next couple of news polls are going to be interesting. Even though people like Matt Canavan will say, well, the polls are meaningless at this point. We're so far from an election. It still gives you a taste of where the electorate's at. Where are you at? Do you have any faith in any of the parties at the moment? I'm becoming so disillusioned. It's not funny. Let me know your thoughts. Okay, it's that time of the night. Time for this. And it would appear I'm not the only one having a bit of a cry tonight. Jon Cryer, he's having a little bit of a whingy too. He is spilling the beans on his old co-star, Charlie Sheen. Now, in a new Netflix documentary about Charlie Sheen, which is amazing, Cryer reveals he was paid just a third of what Sheen earned on 2.5 Men. He even likened Sheen's contract negotiations to a dictator, mentions Kim Jong-il of North Korea, saying Charlie's chaotic lifestyle meant CBS and Warner Brothers were basically shoveling money at him. Cryer's point? Sheen's life was falling apart, yet his salary went off the charts, while Cryer, who held it all together, was left with a third. Poor little Jon Cryer. John, Charlie Sheen was the star. And ultimately, when he was fired and Ashton Kutcher came in, yes, the show had a big interest factor. I think it was 28 million people tuned in to see it. And then the ratings went down. The show was never the same when Charlie Sheen left. He was worth every penny. I'm sorry. I understand that you did the right thing and you held it together, but you did not deserve the money that Charlie Sheen was on. Now, when it comes to shows like The Big Bang Theory, that cast was smart. The original cast all said we get paid the same. Friends did the same. Now, Charlie could have done that with you, but you weren't really a team, were you? He was the star. If your role got replaced, and you did an amazing job in that role, you were the perfect foil. But the show would have gone on. The show would have still succeeded if Charlie Sheen had stayed. And it's like, I liken this to when there was an outcry over The Crown and Matt Smith was getting paid more than the lady who played the Queen. Do you remember her name? Shaking your head. No. But there was an outcry because Matt Smith, who had been Doctor Who, was getting more money. Yeah, because that was his rate. He got paid less on Doctor Who because that was his breakout Clairefoy. That was his breakout performance. And so he got paid less. But when he went to the Crown, he was a name. He was a household name. Clairefoy isn't a household name. I had to rake back and find her name. But there was this outcry. It was brought down to misogyny and pay parity. No, some people are bigger stars that deserve more money. Matt Smith was a bigger star in The Crown. Charlie Sheen was a bigger star on 2.5 Men. And that is why these people deserve more money. It is not about sex. It is not about gender. It is not about the colour of your skin. It is simply about who draws the audiences. Enough of the woke BS, enough of the pay parity. When it comes to, this is a financial transaction. Studios get people in who they believe will deliver the results. Deliver the results. And that, let's hear Jon Cryer as we bring in the Rob's Rant sting. To me, that's what Jon Cryer sounds like right now. Hey, big show coming up. I'm going to show you the Tram Championships in a moment. The Tram Championships. Yes, I'm going to show you the Tram Championships. I came across this. It is hilarious and amazing. And I think, I've got to double check this. I think it's coming to Melbourne in like 2027. We'll see. I'll get some info on that. And Graeme Hood's joining me to debrief on the Sydney Australian Unites rally. And I will also be getting to your feedback. Not before, though. We have a very special random live shot of the day.
It's the random life shot of the day. Where are you going today? You'll never know where you'll end up with the random life shot of the day.
Yes, it's our random live shot of the day. And listen to this. We are inside the TARDIS. This is a live feed inside the TARDIS. The BBC's Doctor Who page live streams this feed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, the TARDIS is a time and space machine used by the Time Lords of Gallifrey. This Type 40 version belongs to the Doctor, which he stole. The outside is stuck in the form of a police box, but can usually change into anything to blend into its surrounds, wherever in the universe it lands, thanks to the chameleon circuit. I could just watch that all day. That is so cool. And it actually, I was watching before, it actually does go through close-ups of the control center and you can hear it take off and you go, oh my God. Bloody BBC. Why is the BBC monetizing their YouTube page? Aren't they meant to be government funded? We'll see if we can go back to that during the feedback, Amanda. All right, let's have a look at the feedback coming through to McKnight tonight. Travis says, Rob, what happened to the member stream over the weekend? Travis, I don't know if you remember, but Amanda was away and I was looking after the kids. I was knackered. I couldn't do it, so I will do one at some point as a bonus this week. So keep an eye out. Maybe while I'm waiting for the show, one night we'll jump on. All right. Own Your Crazy says, is there anything people won't seek to profit from? And this is in terms of the assisted dying and basically, yeah, the assisted dying story I ran. Matthew says the government seems to support abortions, but if somebody is elderly and wants to end their life, they flip out. Absolutely, Matthew. Couldn't agree more with that. Yeah, I just think it should be an issue, like it should be something that's allowed to happen. Matt says this is garbage. They want elderly out of the way and they call it quality of life. Yeah, they do. They don't want to put money into making the elderly. We've had so many issues in the hospice and in aged care facilities. but we won't let them go out on their own terms. Own Your Crazy says, I couldn't make money from people's misery. And I assume that's the company that was, or the people that were doing this as a business. Jason120AU says, not sure if I agree they can make a profit out of it, but help without paying. Sure. Look, I don't actually have a problem with them making some money out of it. They're taking a big risk. It is illegal, and they are buying supplies. They are devoting their time to it. Personally, I don't have a problem. Beck says, I'm openly not a coalition supporter. I feel for their current leader that, that's politics, Beck, and you put your hand up, it's going to be chopped off at some point. Restoration Archive says One Nation and LNP need to merge. Yeah, I think that could have happened many years ago. I don't see it happening soon, though, although you never know if they get desperate enough. Matthew says Andrew Hastie coalition threatens to quit frontbench, issues zero net news yesterday. Actually, I've got that up on my computer at the moment. And that I've got this via the ABC. And Andrew Hastie. Sorry, I'll see if I can enlarge that. Andrew Hastie says he will be without a job if Liberals don't abandon net zero. He's indicated he will quit or be dumped from the shadow cabinet if the coalition does not abandon the target of achieving net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. So this is another division in the Liberal Party at the moment. And it's just, will there be anyone left on the front bench? Because they're all disagreeing with Susan Lee and they're all going to be demoted. So that's another one that could go. Philip says, what with the others are doing, why wouldn't Pauline be a better option? Yep, fair enough. And there's a lot of people who think that way, Philip. Over the page we go. And Gavin says, don't see it happening just quietly. Yes, I understand. Amanda, could we have a quick look? The TARDIS is back. Oh, there's no audio with it. Oh, well. Okay. I'm really glad we did that. I think the picture's frozen when you clicked it. There we go. Oh, that could be my new sleep machine. All right, keep your feedback coming to McKnight tonight. I will get to more of your feedback shortly. And look, you've got to stay with me because I promise you, I'm going to make it worth your while because we are going to the Tram Driver World Championships. And you've got to see what these guys do with trams. And it is coming to Melbourne. But I'll get to that very shortly.
Here comes McKnight tonight.
Well, you might remember last week I spoke with Graeme Hood ahead of the Australia Unites rally. Graeme was the keynote speaker in Sydney. Now, the rallies were pitched as a peaceful stand for unity and against government corruption. Very different in tone to the March for Australia protests, which had drawn accusations of racism. Over the weekend, the rallies took place around the nation without major incident. And I thought it would be worth getting Graeme back to give us his viewpoint on whether they were a success or not. Graeme, welcome back to McKnight Tonight.
Great to be back with you, Rob.
Were you happy with the rallies and the number of people who turned up?
Yeah, look, I to be honest with you, I'm happy with all the rallies that I attend because you get to meet with some great Australian people who have got the same concerns. The numbers were good, and we just take it as it comes. I thought it was great. The weather was beautiful. The police were very cooperative, and there was no dramas that I saw at the rally in Sydney. It was amazing.
No, there didn't seem to be any dramas. In fact, I think in Sydney, it was someone who wasn't part of the rally who got arrested. But the number of people who turned up to the rallies was down compared to the March for Australia rallies. What do you put that down to?
Look, there's a lot of reasons. Well, first, the numbers, we had counters in the crowd that counted 3,500. And one of the counters was talking to the chief inspector that was in charge of police operations there. And he said they estimated from the helicopter for it to be more like 5,000. So, and the ABC said there were a couple of hundred. So,
well, the ABC in Sydney said there were 3,000, Brisbane 1,000. Okay. So, I actually got that 3,000 figure from an ABC website.
Oh, that's good. But so we thought 3,500. The police said more like 5,000. So there was a goodly number of people there. The spirits were high, and everyone was there for the same reason. They're just sick of government overreach, and they're just sick and tired of having the government so heavily involved in their lives. They're not sovereign citizens. They're not tin hat wearers. They're not conspiracy theorists. These are everyday Australians who love their country and who are fed up with being photographed everywhere they go. They're fed up with all the limitations put on them from every tier of government, local, state and federal. And they just want us to return to some sense of normality in this place. And they're sick of the division. There's so much division, Rob. It's just, we're divided on everything. No government in our history has ever divided its people as much as the Albanese government. And we're not interested in division.
I think you're sitting, quite frankly, where a lot of Middle Australia is. And I consider myself a centrist. I think there are people who would see me on the right, and maybe that's true. But I see myself as a centrist who will go depending on the topic. But a lot of what you're saying and what you're saying in this is very far removed from the neo-Nazis, of course, that just really gave these protests a bad name a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yours seem to be, to me, where I hope most of Australia is. I think there might have been rally fatigue, and I also think that a lot of Middle Australia had been scared to come out because of what had happened the weeks before.
Yeah, look, not only that, Rob, I really need to say this about the rally on the 31st of August. I thought those rallies were sensational. I had fears that it would be hijacked, especially by the mainstream media, who would paint everybody there to be racist. Yes, there was a National Socialist Network group there, but they were very small in number, and most of the people weren't happy with them having a say. Most of the people were there on that day for the same reason that we were there on Saturday. In fact, a lot of the same people attended both rallies. So you'll notice that a lot of people were wearing their Australian flags and flying them at both rallies. And I can categorically state from my heart that the people who rallied at the so-called, the anti-immigration rally, Rob, were just great people, and they wouldn't have agreed with that National Socialist Network presence.
Well, we saw it. We saw it, Graeme. We saw people turning on the speakers and shouting them down. What is interesting is that watching the news that night, the news stories were very quick, no grabs of you. You were a keynote speaker in Sydney, the biggest city in Australia. And I have to wonder whether the media were disappointed that racism wasn't sprouted and people weren't fighting in the streets. You know, do you have to be a neo-Nazi to get better coverage?
Well, it would seem that way. Now, that's a blight on the mainstream media, and I know that's the area that you've worked in.
No, but I agree with you.
I know you do, Rob, and I got that from our last interview. I've got to say that the mainstream were looking at. I was marching at the front, and I noticed there were cameras focusing on some people who had very passionate ideas that were not totally in line with the reason most people were rallying. But if you're talking about rallying for freedom and freedom of speech and democracy in a country, you can't therefore go up and say to people, "No, you're not allowed to participate in this rally," because that shoots everything in the foot. That's not how it's meant to work. So the reason I think the mainstream didn't focus on me as much was because I'm not controversial enough for it.
Because you were talking sense.
Yeah, and I tell you what, Rob, look, I've said this a million times, mate. Left wing, right wing, who cares? I don't give a toss about that stuff. I never flew an aeroplane, Rob, that didn't fly well unless it had a left wing and a right wing. And where do all the people sit? They sit in the middle, Rob, where the seats are, in the fuselage. And that's where Australia is. And
this is my point.
Everybody in this whole mix of this country that we live in, they only ever get to see the pendulum where they want it to be for a split second as it passes through. Even those on the far right, it hangs up there for a few minutes, and then it swings back the other way to the left, and the left get it for a few minutes, and the people in the middle probably see it more often than those on the far left and the far right. And I think common sense is what's drastically needed in this country, and we've got to end this division. And I'm all about ending the division. I tell you, I've never seen my country so divided. It's enough already.
Well, yes, and division is getting very scary, and I'll get to that about Charlie Kirk in a moment. But what do you think about this idea? I keep seeing commentary that, anybody who's wearing an Australia flag is racist. You know, like you can just tell they're racist. I mean, that would have to be the biggest load of crap ever, wouldn't it?
It's got to be the biggest load of crap. I mean, it is the biggest load of crap. I remember as a school kid, we sang the national anthem in the schoolyard when they were raising the flag. You know, I've always been proud of our Australian flag, even when the referendum took place to try and change it and all that sort of stuff. We love our we love our Southern Cross, and to think that Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price and Pauline Hanson were castigated in the Senate chamber for wearing the Australian flag in there.
Yeah.
And these clowns in the Greens were upset because they couldn't wear a Palestinian flag or something. I mean, there's something wrong with that. We live in Australia. The Australian flag.
I played
adorns
that clip
the
here
Senate.
on McKnight tonight, and I just couldn't believe the way the Greens said, well, if she can wear an Australian flag, I'll come in wearing the Palestinian flag. I mean, I just find that ridiculous.
Hey, you know what, Rob? What was really great on the weekend? I saw Asians, Indians, people from the Middle East. I saw people from all the countries around the world, pretty much, and most of them were wearing an Australian flag or flying one.
And
That's
proud to
what's
be
great.
here.
And proud to be here. They love this country as much as we do, and some of them treat it better than we do, Rob. So they're out there working. You look at some of these communities; they work really hard to produce in this country, and we should be proud of them because they're standing there with us, holding our flag. I mean, it was beautiful. I was really upbeat about the whole thing.
Great. Will there be another rally?
Oh, look, mate, Australia's going to be rallying until we start to see some common sense. How many will I be involved in? I've got to be honest, I'm getting a bit weary, so I understand people being weary of them. And that in no way says that I'm out of this fight. I'm going to keep doing what you and I are doing now, podcasting and trying to get some common sense out there as best we can. Try not to run down rabbit holes and try not to create theories out of everything like is happening around Charlie Kirk at the moment, and I know we're going to get to that soon. But this would go a whole lot better if the mainstream media actually did some proper reporting, and they're starting to do it more than they did during COVID, I must admit. And one thing I wanted to say to you, Rob, you were the producer of the Spotlight program.
Yep.
On the vaccine rollout, and you did put to air. Who are the ladies? I'm sorry, you put to air.
Karen Phelps and her partner?
Karen Phelps and her partner. I'm sorry, Karen, I didn't mean to do that. But I tell you, I've got to be honest with you, mate. Club Grubbery program we got a panel of experts together to view that program, and we did a critique on it, and it wasn't very flattering. So we thought that it was way too tilted the other way. Gigi Foster, who was on that panel and on the program with you, she was very disappointed the way that went because it didn't go deep enough into the other side, and there wasn't enough balance in it. And but at least you put something to air, and we.
Well,
need
I'll
to
tell
be
you
more
something,
balanced.
Graeme, and you can do whatever you want with this information. I didn't have the final edit on that piece, and
Yep.
I remember there was a lady who stood up and talked. And I don't want to go down the COVID rabbit hole tonight because that's not what we're here
No,
about.
that's fine.
Yep. But there was a lady who stood up and said, and showed a sign, and she had the sign, and it was a TGA sign that indicated that the TGA can't guarantee this will work. It was a black symbol. I can't remember it. Anyway, and it was on the COVID vaccines. And
Yep.
and so I went and researched this before I included it in the edit, and it was true. And it got edited out, and I fought for it because I thought this is an interesting point of view, and I'll cop whatever criticisms because I thought on the whole we did do a balanced job, but this one I thought this needs to be in there, but I got overridden based on they didn't know who this lady was and where she was from, and I said to them, it doesn't matter, the information's true, it's on the TGA website, and so. Out of that, everything in that special, I'll cop whatever criticisms. That was one thing I was really disappointed in, where I felt we didn't give a full narrative on what was happening.
Yeah, and I know where you stand on this, because I do get from what you're saying, and I also know how things happen in the edit suite. Excuse me, and it was a very difficult time, because the masters of the media, of course, are pulling all the strings, and you've got to be very careful what you do, and I know that.
But what I will
really
say, Graeme, is that it's not some conspiracy. I've worked in the media for a long time, and I can tell you that people, like when I'm working at 7, I don't call Channel 9 and saying, how are you playing this story? How are you doing that? People think there's this one big overarching editorial decision about the media. It's not. I think people in the media tend to be very left-leaning. And so I do think that skews editorial opinion. And I also think they follow each other. It's almost like an echo chamber, but it's not. Yeah. It's not actually a conspiracy.
Yeah, I think a lot of it too is that you guys live, when you're in that game, you live in a bubble,
Sure.
And you live in a certain bubble of information, which is an echo chamber. And a lot of that information, if it's left-leaning, is tilted in that direction. And I got from talking to you last time when we discussed that topic that there was a lot of stuff that you really weren't aware of. And
I agree.
I think
Yes.
I think it beholds a whole lot of journalists who are out there writing the stories to actually stop thinking that anybody with a different point of view is a conspiracy theorist, and actually listen, because our program, we've interviewed Professor Harvey Reish, Professor Robert Clancy, Professor Angus Dalgleish, Professor Paul Marrick. The professors go on and on and on. And they have all backed up everything that we've put forward, but nobody listens to them, and it never gets to the mainstream. So I think that's one of the big frustrations that people have in the rallies. They want the mainstream to report their concerns, because the fourth estate is meant to keep the bastards honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
I agree. I'm going to go and listen to your episode of Club Buggery and Grubbery. Sorry,
Grubbery.
I did that last time too. I'm going to go and listen to that episode of Club Grubbery, and I'll come back to you on what I agree with and what I don't, because I do think there are criticisms that would be valid. Look, we need to move on, and we mentioned him before, but I want to talk about the death of Charlie Kirk. What many people watching this might not know is that you appeared on a panel with him, and just before you came out, have a listen to what Charlie said about you.
So we have Graeme Hood from Australia. He's traveled all the way from Australia.
I love this guy. He's great. He has amazing testimony. How are you? Yeah.
Graeme, how has his death affected you?
A month roster in advance. And most of the time I was senior enough to be able to keep to myself, you know what I'm giving.
Sorry, Graeme, how has his death affected you?
Very hard. Very hard, mate. I think the video's still playing. You may not be hearing me, but very hard.
I can see it. I didn't realise it would be so emotional for. I mean, you've met him, you've worked with him. It is. We're talking about a political assassination. It's shocking that these kind of events happen.
There's only one other assassination I think had as much effect around the world, and that was JFK. But this one I think is even going further than that. It's polarised a whole lot of people around what's really important in the world now. Charlie Kirk, I spent an hour backstage with him. It was basically one-on-one, him and me. And he wanted to listen. He listened to my story. He wanted to, he was writing a Christian book on Sabbath keeping, and I'm a Sabbath keeper, and he wanted insights from me, and I gave them in that video on the couch with him, and he actually listened. And my last memory of him was after we left the stage. He's a very tall man, and he towered above his minders, and his minders were bundling up to get him out. He was always under threat. And as they were pushing him out the door to get into a car to get away, he kept pointing back at me and he said, "You're the real deal. I want to keep talking to you. I need to keep talking to you, especially about this book. Please stay in touch with me." And I was planning to catch up with him in March next year when I go back to Arizona. Oh, wow. And we were going to talk. And so I was deeply touched by a 31-year-old man because his heart was in the right place. His heart
Well,
was very, very special.
it's interesting what you say that he just wanted to listen, because that whole panel discussion, there'd be some panelists who have a bit more notoriety that would be jumping in while you're trying to tell your story. He doesn't do that. He actually did listen. But does his assassination make you reconsider your own safety when speaking at rallies? I mean, we're now getting into scary territory where people are being killed for their opinions.
Yeah, and that's what's really sad. No, look, I have been threatened before, where police were involved in my protection. I won't go into any more detail than that. But I'm a man of faith. I have real faith, and that's why I do the things I do. I'm not doing this because I want notoriety. I believe, as a Christian man, that Jesus is coming soon, and I want to prepare and shed as much compassion around the world as I can in whatever capacity I have. And so when anyone threatens me, I go, that's fine, because I don't need protection. I put my faith in God. And so I look, on the weekend, a lot of people wanted me not to go because they said, you're taking a huge risk. And my approach was, well, evil doesn't want us to speak compassion and love into this country. And that's why evil is taking out good people who are speaking the truth. And that's why Charlie Kirk was taken out, mate, honestly, because Charlie realised that Jesus died for him, and Charlie died for Jesus the other day because he loved Jesus, and that was the story. And I know a lot of people are going to, cringe when I say that, but that's how it is for me. If evil is going to threaten me to stop me from speaking, they're only going to embolden me even more. So I think a lot of people are saying these days, I am Charlie Kirk. I mean, I'm not a patch on Charlie Kirk, but I tell you what, my name's Graeme Hood, and my spirit is in Charlie Kirk. And
that's interesting. Sorry,
I won't
Graeme.
be silenced. I won't be silenced.
As I jump in. Sorry, Graeme.
I didn't mean you.
No, I know. One of the things that gets me, there's a lot I didn't agree with Charlie Kirk on, right? Whether it's abortion, whether it's gay, or, a lot of issues I did not agree with him on.
Sure.
But I do not believe that anyone should be killed for their political opinions. I just think it's crazy. And one of the things that has shocked me is how happy people have been about his death, and especially when they point to his the comments he's given about school shootings and guns and things like that. And they've actually turned on people on the left. These are people on the left who have shown compassion for him and his family. They've been trolled and people have attacked them. I don't understand the mentality here.
I don't. And see, that's the most concerning thing for me. And that's the reason Charlie Kirk was so outspoken about everything. There's a palpable sense of evil. We're not in a battle between red and blue and far left and far right. We're in a battle between good and evil. And anyone who doesn't see that now is missing the point. And the evil exists on both sides of the paradigm. It does.
Agreed.
And that's what's most frightening, Rob, is that people would laugh and have parties because someone was assassinated. I mean, that just beggars belief to me. I mean, George Floyd's death got more traction and there was much more traction than Charlie Kirk did. And it just goes to show where the narratives are leaning, and that's what we've got to fight.
On a traction point of view, I mean, Charlie Kirk, it has been reported there hasn't been violence like there was with George Floyd, but it's certainly been a topic of discussion and newscasts around the world. What?
Yeah, that's what I was talking about, the violence. But here's the thing, though. Here's the thing, though, Rob. Charlie Kirk wouldn't want any violence around his death. He wouldn't want it. He'd be adamantly
but the
against
violence is an interesting one, because those on the right have accused the left and the Democrats of being the party of hate. But this kind of rhetoric where people are labeling the other side fascists. I mean, it's both sides, isn't it? This isn't restricted to one side. Well, you just made the point that it's both sides.
Well, you've got to have a lot of hate in your heart to label somebody else as filled with hate.
Yeah.
It's diabolical. The whole thing is just, like people argue about Palestine, Israel. And while they're arguing, kids are dying on both sides of the border. So we instead of arguing over who's right, we should be saying, stop the killing. I'm pro-life. I'm not pro-Israel or pro-Palestine. I'm pro-life. And I'm not pro-Ukraine or pro-Russia. I'm pro-life. while all this argy-bargy is going on, innocent people are being destroyed in their tens of thousands. And we all sanctify ourselves with our political arguments on who's right and who's wrong. The truth is there's a whole bunch of stuff we haven't got a clue about, and we will never know this side of going to heaven. That's my belief. And so I believe the best thing we can do is draw attention to the needy. Like, for example, on the weekend, two times over the weekend, I mentioned the infected blood scandal that happened back in the 1980s. That's where a whole bunch of people got AIDS-infected blood, and they were never, ever compensated by the government. The government sponsored the whole dealing out of those infected bloods, and those people have never had justice. And if I've got an opportunity 30 or 40 years after the event to raise their cause for them, that's what I'm going to do. And I did twice. And I've been castigated for it, which is really crazy. But we have got issues. And I talked to Charlie Kirk about, he said to me, what are the big issues in Australia? I said, medical tyranny is just some of it, overarching government that's too involved in everything, big government. Look, democratic nations run better when you've got small government. And I talked to him about the infected blood scandal. And he said, we've had the same thing in the US. And nobody is owning up. Everybody's running for cover. So these are the things that make me passionate. I'm not into the politics between the different freedom groups. I'm not into the argy-bargy that goes on between the different franchises that organise the rallies. And to be honest with you, I've been asked to run in the Senate for 4 different groups, and I've said no because I believe I can do more good doing things like this with you, Rob. You know, speaking common sense and compassion into our country. That's what I want to do. That's what drives me, mate.
I love a bit of common sense. That story you've just mentioned about HIV, I'm not aware of that story, so I want to go and look that up, because if that's the case, that's a worthy story, and that's what you're doing with interviews like this.
That's right. I want to spread that word because Dr. Neil Blewett, who was health minister at the time, presided over one of the biggest medical cover-ups in Australian history, where they knew that AIDS-infected blood was in the blood bank, and they were giving it out to people without warning. And then when the people received it, these are pregnant mothers and haemophiliacs. When they got it, a lot of them contracted AIDS, and many of them are dead now because of that. And they haven't received 1 cent of compensation, Rob. It's despicable. And that's going to happen with victims. Look at the pelvic mesh cases. You know, all the big law firms, they make lots of money. But the victims who bring these complaints to court get nothing. And the same will happen with victims of COVID vaccine jabs and victims of other medical tyrannies that have gone on. Look at the thalidomide case. When are we as a nation going to realise that if we walk past something like that, we're accepting a standard that we have no moral authority to live in? And we've
seen lots of medical issues over the years that have tried to be covered up. So this will be one worth watching. Just quickly, Graeme, will you be going to Charlie Kirk's funeral?
I wish I could, but no, I won't be. I won't be going. But I know some people who are. I know somebody who's going to be laying a Club Grubbery wreath at the funeral. But I'll be there in spirit. I think the world has lost an amazing man. Polarising, yes, he was, but at the root cause of everything he stood for, he was for compassion and healing, and he did a lot of good for a lot of young people. And some people are upset, sure, but the fact that people are cheering and laughing, I mean, they need to reflect on that.
No, and I agree with you, because whatever side of politics you are, I just can't understand that kind of thing. This was a guy who just said his viewpoint. He wasn't killing people. He wasn't in charge of nuclear arsenal or anything like that. He was a guy just giving his view, and people thought that was worth silencing. Hey, Graeme, you mentioned it, but you are the co-host of Club Grubbery with former paramedic John Latta. Just go to clubgrubbery.com.au for all the details. Graeme, really do appreciate you coming back on McKnight tonight.
Mate, I love it, and I really love your passion. I love that you're getting out there and you're creating a difference by doing this program. As you say, we may not disagree on everything, but I acknowledge your right to do what you're doing, and I know you acknowledge mine, and that's
Absolutely.
how this works. And I'll come on anytime you want me to come on, Rob.
Good on you, Graeme, and I'll do the same with you. Thanks very much for your time.
God bless you, mate. Bye-bye.
Yes, I'm very well aware the feedback is going through the roof, and I will get that I will get to that very quickly in a moment, is what I'm trying to say. But first, it's time for a backhand quickie. We can fit in a backhand quickie, can't we? Have you ever heard of the Tram Driver World Championships? No, I hadn't either, but they've just been held in Vienna. An Austrian tram driver was crowned the winner, with drivers from Hong Kong, Rio de Janeiro and San Diego and Australia travelling to the city to show off their tram operating skills in front of thousands of spectators. The event saw drivers compete in a series of tram-based challenges, including quirky tasks of bowling and curling using the vehicle. The BBC reports organisers said that thousands of visitors came to watch the spectacle, which marked 160 years since trams instead were introduced to Vienna.
And the game has started. He is moving the train for the first stop. Then another soft acceleration, second stop, and the same for the third time. See, with every drop of water that you lose from that container, you lose points, and they know that, they see that, that's right in front of them. That bowl is right in front of their nose when they're driving, and they see every drop spitting out of that container, and so you lose points, and you know that. But if you do that too softly, if you do too cautious, then you lose time, and you know that as well. So I think it's a big pressure in your head and in your neck. So Afid ran through the train, taking his place in the cockpit and going for the second challenge, for the speed challenge. 25 kilometers an hour without seeing the speedometer, and then make a perfect braking there with that special brake where you have to put the force in. 529, is that the speed he was taking? That is far too slow. So that is very good with the braking. 500, wow, that's good. Very good, well done. And now up to the bowling. Afid, you have to speed up a bit. Yeah, that's good. That's good. But now break it. Well done. Very
well
good.
Done indeed. And I can confirm the Tram Driver World Championship is coming to Melbourne in 2027. I might have to go down and watch it. I've got to be honest, I'm sort of fascinated by it. All right, I know there's a lot of feedback coming. Let's get into it. I'll start the music. Own Your Crazy says, who was the biggest star on Studio 10? And over the page we go. Maybe someone's answered that. Restoration Archive says, Rob. You better believe it. Beck says, personally, I feel everyone should be paid the same regardless. I'm coming from a person with a disability quite often. We are not paid the same, and even if he is a bigger star, that should be the way it is. Beck, in everyday life, I agree with you. I do believe in pay equality, but when you are talking about a star is like a commodity, and they bring in an audience. People say, I'm going to watch that because of whether it's Charlie Sheen, Jennifer Lawrence, whoever. They make choices, and that's why just because you've got two people starring in a show or a movie, they shouldn't be paid the same. I don't think if I start in a movie with Jennifer Lawrence tomorrow, I should not be paid the same as her. She is an A-list star who would draw an audience. I am not. Just quietly. Own Your Crazy says, one could argue Jon Cryer provided 2.5 men with continuity when 1.5 of the men turned on the show. Yes, very true, very true. I will cop that, but Charlie was the star. Gavin Wright said the Lib shat their pants and only changed their shirt. Yes, and there'll be a few more changes along the way, I can guarantee. All right, now let's move on to the interview with Graeme Hood. That has got you talking. Own Your Crazy says the racists behaved. It's a miracle. See, I don't think the majority of people who were going to these rallies were racist. The neo-Nazi ones, the March for Australia was organised by racists, but I don't think these kind of rallies, I don't think they're going there for racism. I'm just going to have to disagree with you. Restoration Archive says the numbers are down because it was way too close to the last rally. I agree. People don't want to turn it into a weekly thing, unlike the other protesting friends. Over the page we go. And we've got this one from Jan. I wonder if the fact it was on a Saturday made a difference. Very well could have, Jan. I think it was probably too close. Matt says, no, Rob, you are on the left. It's funny you say that. I genuinely think I'm pretty much central. And I think I'm like the majority of Australians, and I will go left or right depending on the issue. But I've got friends who consider me so far right. And obviously, Matt, you think I'm very much on the left. You know what? I'm just me, and that's all you're ever going to get on McKnight Tonight. Gareth says, Rob, you are not a journalist. You are failing to push back. You are failing to provide a counter interview from an expert. Very disappointing, especially when your work at Studio 10 provided balance. Gareth, the thing I'm going to say to that is that this is very much an opinion show. And when I disagreed with Graeme tonight, I pushed back on that and I set some records straight. But I've got to say the majority of what he said I agreed with, and I thought he was talking sense. And that's what I'm going to do. You know, when he said it was reported that there were only hundreds in Sydney, I fact-checked that and I pointed out to him, and I don't think he was aware that the ABC had actually reported 3,000, and there were a couple of other examples like that. I think you might be making views based on your personal view of the issue, and that's fine. That is absolutely your right. But I will ask the questions that come to me when I'm in that moment, and I will push back where necessary. But I enjoyed Graeme and I enjoyed that interview. Beck says, I wonder if we could have on the show someone maybe for 2 weeks to talk about their views and the different frames. I think what you're saying, Beck, is that you want someone with an alternative view. I'm happy to have everyone here on McKnight Tonight. Left, right, whoever. I have never stopped that from being a thing. I will have someone on the left and there will be a lot of issues I agree with and there'll be some I don't, and you will get the same type of interview and the script will be reversed probably on the feedback we get. Victoria says on the Facebook, for a pilot hoodie always sounds grounded. Nice flight pun, I like it. Beck says, again, Rob, I love you, but my question is, would you give somebody from the other side of politics the same amount of time and a platform? Yes, Beck. Yes, I would. Absolutely. Trish says, to cheer for anyone's death is evil. I agree, Trish, and I don't think you can call yourself a good person when you're very happy about someone's death. Now, look, I think there are people that are outside of that. Osama bin Laden, Hitler. But I think for someone who was sprouting political views you didn't like, no, I don't think so. Spencer Howson says, hello, Spencer. I play a train driving simulation game. This is much harder than you think. This was the Tram Championships. I thought of you, Spencer. When I saw this vision, I thought of you. Trish again says, lots of people who went to the rallies didn't know who organised them. Just saying. Yes, Trish, that was the point. When these rallies first came up on McKnight Tonight, the March for Australia rally, I specifically warned the viewers of McKnight Tonight that this is not the rallies you want to go to. When I started looking into who was organising them, appreciate your feedback. Appreciate all your feedback. It's Media McKnight tomorrow at 9 o'clock, where I take a look at the media stories of the week and maybe throw a bit of commentary in there as well. McKnight Tonight is back at 9 o'clock on Wednesday. We are here every Monday, Wednesday and Thursday at 9 p.m, streaming live around the globe as we talk hot topics. It's a different take on the news of the day. Thanks for your company. I'll see you tomorrow from Media McKnight. Good night from McKnight.